Hello team, welcome to the Yoga Teachers Hustle, where we talk about different experiences of yoga teaching that perhaps you aren't taught about when you first do your qualifications or when you're learning just to do yoga yourself. And today I want to talk about an empty classroom. Now, there's going to be some people that listen to this that it's kind of their worst nightmare. And some people are going to be listening to this and thinking, yes, this has happened to me and it wasn't very pleasant. So I just wanted to talk about it in a bit more detail. When I talk about an empty classroom, I'm talking about when we put on a class and nobody turns up. Now, this has happened to me. This has happened to friends. And it's happened in different scenarios. So I want to tell you as many of those as I can, purely because people will say, well, I didn't hire the room myself, I was at a studio or a gym and it's still happening, and things like that. So I want to go down that route. So first of all, the first time it happened to me was when I was running classes in a gym environment. A gym, more of a holistic style gym. So although it was a gym, there was a lot of holistic classes and people did come to this gym mainly to do sort of holistic classes like Pilates and Tai Chi and yoga. And the first class I did, nobody turned up. And I was new to, I'd been teaching a fair few years. I'd been teaching about 6 years. I'd moved back to an area which I was familiar with, and I sat in the classroom and nobody came in. And fortunately, I still got paid by the gym, even though I was doing nothing. So I just did my own practice, and I actually really enjoyed just having the peace and quiet in the room to myself. And because I was being paid per class, the gym didn't give up on me straight away, and they kept sort of advertising for me till eventually people did start joining the class. Although I had social media and I knew the area from when I was younger, and I had people I knew on my social media, most of my social media contacts were for a different area in the UK. So for me to advertise myself on social media in that way to get people into the classroom was just not something that was going to be feasible, because I was advertising on local forums, local town and village forums and surrounding areas. But because it was a gym, most of the people that joined were gym members. I kind of had to rely on the gym to advertise for me. However, eventually, over time, I built up the classes, and I had really, really successful classes at that gym space, and what memories that I'll cherish. But I was lucky because I was being paid. But what happens when you're in a room that you've paid for and you're offering classes, and maybe the first classes you do, people haven't turned up, or maybe you have regular classes with people drop in and they haven't turned up, or they've put their name down for it but they still haven't turned up. Well, this is when it gets a little bit more complicated, because you are paying for that room. You are running a business, you're paying for that room, and the chances are when you first start out and you don't have sort of a loyal clientele base, or perhaps you don't have a vast clientele base to fill in gaps when some classes aren't busy, and you've not developed a waiting list so people were willing to do other classes at different times because they can't get on the ones they want. When you've not got that base, you can't fill the room, but you're still paying for it. And you're not making necessarily a massive income. So the chances are you're already going to have a job somewhere else, doing a different career, and your yoga is just there kind of supporting it or bringing a bit of extra money in, or you're just learning new skills so you can eventually, your dream is to take your yoga on a full-time basis. So when you're like that, you've not got income you can just be throwing at this room. Every penny that you're spending on your yoga is something that either comes from another source of income or is from other classes, and it's not a steady pot of money. And this is where you have to kind of be a little bit strict. So I started a Saturday class. I was doing a Thursday class, I was doing a Monday class, and they went really well. But when I put on the Saturday class, the first class I ever did on the Saturday in this particular room was well received. I had 12 people turn up. The following week I had 5 people turn up. The week after that I had 1 person turn up, and the week after that I had nobody. And I remember contacting the people that had booked onto the class that hadn't turned up and asked them, why they hadn't, or they'd forgotten about it. But most of them said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's Saturday and I wanted to spend time with the family." But some of these people hadn't bothered contacting me to tell me that they weren't coming, and I still had to pay out for that room. And I did, and I sat there and I did my own practice. I am lucky that I didn't take it personally, because I've been teaching a long time and the other classes were busy. But I think it frustrated me, and I didn't want to be in a state of frustration, because yoga is about forgiveness, and it's about opening yourself up and seeing when something feels like it's going wrong, seeing what opportunities can come from it and what lessons and growth come from that. But you still can't help but feel frustrated, that because at the end of the day, these people are living their own lives. They're thinking about their own lives in their own bubble, in their own thoughts, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely natural. But you, as a yoga instructor, are running a business. And if you want to make sure that you are financially successful, there's got to be a point where you say, yes, I love to do yoga, and yes, I want to help people as much as I can, but I've got to be a little bit stricter with my financial rules. So this is when I started taking money and payment when people booked in the class with me. I did eventually get a booking system, so if they booked on, if they didn't actually turn up, or they cancelled within a certain time frame, I actually still got the money. But this is why I did get the booking system in the long term, because I wanted to be able to take money. But every time someone booked on, I took money. So at the end of each class, if people wanted to pay cash, I'd say, for next week, if you want to book on, have your cash ready, and they would pay. So if they didn't turn up, they wouldn't get that money back, and they were made very aware of that. I also set a number of classes where it was 6 weeks. You paid for 6 weeks in a row. It's a difficult one, because if you're asking for people to pay for 6 weeks and they can't commit to those 6 weeks, they may not sign up at all. But if you do get people committing to those 6 weeks, they're going to be regular and they're going to be loyal. And you might have a drop-in of 12 people most weeks, but 8 some weeks. Or you might have a steady 6-week program with 8 set people. So it just stops that from, if people know they've already paid, it will just stops that financial situation happening. Now, I know it's not a very nice feeling, and it's really hard not to take it personally when it happens. But you see, you can justify it. Oh, it's holidays this week, or it was a Saturday and things. But the bottom line is, when it comes to yoga, these people aren't your friends. I know you make friendships. I know you grow this beautiful community, but their priorities, students' priorities, are their families, or their jobs, or their homes. It's lovely to come to yoga, but it's not their priority. So you have to, I say you have, it's like I'm telling you off, but there comes a point when there needs to be a priority for yourself, and that priority is to make sure that you're not spending money on rooms that can't be filled, that you're putting guidelines down. The thing is, if you do terms and conditions, and when people join up to your classes, if you offer them a welcome letter that has terms and conditions about payment on there, saying that you do take payment prior to the booking, or you only do 6-week bookings, or if you cancel within that 24-hour period, you'll lose your money, or if you're running classes where people pay as they turn up, or they do a set and you send them an invoice and then they pay you afterwards, there's no guarantee you're going to get that financial cost for that. And also, if you're doing something where you invoice after they've done 5, if you're a personal trainer and you're invoicing after 5 lessons, you've got to sort that paperwork out. You've got to send it, and then you've got to wait for them to come back. And when they don't come back, you've got to come and say, right, okay, well, you still owe me this money, and you've got to chase it, which is time, effort, and a little bit kind of makes you feel a bit awkward, because, and I'm not saying people don't pay because they don't want to pay. A lot of people just forget. They just forget. That's just standard. But if you take in payment and have a very concise, very clear payment method and routine for booking classes, it's going to stop you from having empty rooms. It's going to stop you from having to ask for money, and it's going to make sure that everything that you pay out is you've taken money for to pay out, so you're not living in a deficit. Now, if you work for a yoga studio and you are a new teacher there, and they've put you on the timetable, but the students that frequent this studio don't know you very well, and they need to get to know your classes. There is a couple of ways of going about it. Now you can try and speak to the studio themselves and say, look, can you advertise me more on your social media, on your website? I will give you an advert that you can put out, or is there an advert that you want me to do? Can I be put on your website as a profile so people know who I am? Can I put a link on your social media to a video that I've made so people know what I'm doing? But if they're kind of doing that and you're still not getting people, then there is an opportunity for you to bring more people into this studio and grow your classes with people that don't know the studio so well. So you might have members at this studio that will always go to the same teachers and they're not willing to move. But if you're advertising on your social media and going to local buildings, like community buildings, and advertising on social media, on community pages, going to local businesses and say, I can do sort of corporate things for you at this studio, you're going to be bringing more people into the studio, which is obviously the studio are going to like that. They're going to give you opportunity to do more classes. But you've got a whole new set of students that have never worked at that studio before with any particular teacher and don't seem to and won't have formed alliances or loyalty to certain teachers and are going to be a bit more open-minded to the classes that they do. So there is ways of sort of promoting yourself more. I mean, I do think if you are somebody that's hiring out a community building, a lot of community buildings, they do have their own Facebook pages and they do have links and networks to other local businesses and local community sort of events. So it might be worth, when you're hiring out a space, actually speaking to the owners and saying, can you advertise on your Facebook page? Do you know people where I can give leaflets to? I mean, I know leaflets seem a little bit old hat these days, but they can be really, really useful to try and grab people's attention. Go to local fetes and markets. I mean, I read tarot, so I actually go to local markets with my information about who I am as a yoga teacher, and I also have a stall incorporated with tarot, so that it kind of gets people a talking point. It gets people talking to me, and even if they don't necessarily want to sit and have a tarot card reading, they might say, oh, you do tarot, and then they'll start picking up the leaflets and, oh, I don't think that like tarot so much, but I like the idea of yoga. What kind of yoga do you do? So we all want to be that big name online where we get loads of people following us online so that we can make money from that, but yoga is a hustle. That's why this is called the Yoga Teacher's Hustle. And yes, we don't want you to think small. We want you to think big, but you have to remember the small in order to get the money coming in. I feel like I've kind of gone on and on a little bit about this, but it's just a little bit of food for thought. What the main message I want to give you in this podcast is that you shouldn't feel like you're a failure if people don't turn up. And if people don't turn up, these are the kind of points to go through. Sit down and do your own practice and enjoy it and just think, I'm paying for this room, I'm going to do it. If they don't turn up, second point is, I'm not going to let this happen again. How can I stop this from happening again? So what procedures can I put in place when people are booking to stop this from happening again? And thirdly, right, let's have a look at how I'm going to advertise myself more, how I can change the way I approach this social media and network with other like-minded people and companies. So that's just 3 things to consider when this happens to you. Now, I'm sorry if it has, and I'm dreadfully, painfully sad for you because I know how upsetting it is, but please do not take it personally. Very, very rarely has anything to do with your ability as a teacher. It's to do with life as it is at the moment, things that are going on, instability all around us, and it just has a massive effect on other people. So I hope you've enjoyed that. You might need to listen to it a couple of times because I know there was a lot of information that I gave you. But if you are enjoying listening to the Yoga Teacher Hustle podcast, please like the videos and share them, and also subscribe, because it just ensures to me that I'm giving you the right content and that they're helping you, and I want to keep giving that content. And if there's anything you want to know in particular, or anything you have a problem with that you want to discuss, you can always put that in the comments below and we can discuss it. Alternatively, I do actually offer one-to-one coaching for teachers, and you can find out more about that on my website, which the link is also in the comments below. So I hope you have a fabulous day. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.